Hey everyone, this is Libertarian Black Man. Last month, General Motors just announced that they were going to lay off thousands of workers in North America. And I have to say, I feel sorry for General Motors because no matter what they do, they are going to catch flack from the people. In particular, the President of the United States, who said, "I am very disappointed with General Motors and their CEO, Mary Barra, for closing plants in Ohio, Michigan, and Maryland. Nothing being closed in China and Mexico," he always has to say, because these are the countries he blames for taking American jobs. He goes on, "The U.S. saved General Motors, and this is the thanks we get. We are now looking at cutting all GM subsidies, including for electric cars. I am here to protect America's workers." Now, I have to agree with the president on one thing: cutting GM subsidies. In fact, no business should be getting any subsidies from the government. That's called corporate welfare. Libertarians, and really everyone, but libertarians especially, should be against corporate welfare or government subsidizing any enterprise for any reason. That's called favoritism. That is called crony capitalism. That's called corporatism. So I'm for cutting the subsidies, but not with the same motivation. In fact, President Trump wants to punish GM for the layoff decision by cutting subsidies. I am against the subsidies on principle, but I am for General Motors' decision to lay off workers. And the reason why is actually very simple. General Motors is a business, and General Motors has to get rid of any kind of project that is not returning sufficient income to the company. Let's take a trip down memory lane in order to see why General Motors had to lay off so many people. Back in 2008, General Motors faced certain death, not just bankruptcy, but they could not borrow money to stay alive from the credit markets because they were frozen during the financial crisis. They went with their tail between their legs to the taxpayer and said, "If you don't give us billions of dollars, we're out of business because we have lost too much money." So General Motors got their corporate welfare from the government, which was provided by both Republicans and Democrats. They're both supporters of corporate welfare. And General Motors ended up staying alive through the financial crisis and afterwards. But why did they need the money? Because General Motors allowed losses to pile up for years. GM lost in 2005 $10.6 billion. In 2006, they lost $2 billion. In 2007, as if they didn't know that they were losing billions of dollars, posted the biggest loss by any automaker in the history of America, $38.7 billion in 2007. And the losses continued well into the financial crisis of 2008, losing $31 billion that year. After getting their subsidies and their investment through loans and purchases of their stock, General Motors continued to lose money, losing $4.3 billion in 2009. Fortunately for them, profits returned for the first time since 2004. In fact, they earned $4.7 billion in 2010. And that was the first profit that they had since they started losing money in 2005. The profits continue. General Motors made a 2011 profit of $7.6 billion. In 2012, General Motors made $4.9 billion in profits. 2013, they made $3.8 billion in profits. Their profits are declining, but they still have them. Profits for each year since they left the financial crisis in 2009. They made $2.8 billion in profits in 2014. $9.7 billion in profits in 2015. That's the largest since the financial crisis. And they got close to matching that in 2016, $9.4 billion in profits for 2016. Unfortunately for General Motors, losses returned for the first time since 2009 in 2017. Even though 2017 was seen as a strong year for General Motors by most of the media, they actually posted a loss of $3.9 billion that year. So in 2018, General Motors said, "We remember where we were 10 years ago and we're not going back. We're going to avoid bankruptcy. This time, we're cutting capacity, laying off 14,700 workers in North America, because we do remember where we were and we don't want to go back." The CEO said that General Motors does not foresee an economic downturn, which is ludicrous because an economic downturn is coming. All the signs are there, and I've made that clear in previous videos. But interesting how they say they don't foresee a downturn, but they want to, quote, get in front of it. So they're getting in front of something they don't see, I guess, declaring that the company is strong and that the economy is strong. So General Motors at least has shown signs that they've learned their lesson from the financial crisis. The CEO also said the industry is changing rapidly, moving toward electric propulsion, autonomous vehicles, and ride sharing, and GM must adjust to it. That is business 101. You must adjust to the market. The market will not adjust to you. So as a business, if consumer tastes are changing, which they are, you change with it or you die. It's that simple. CEO continued by saying factories up for closure are part of GM's effort to right-size our capacity for the realities of the marketplace as consumers shift away from cars to trucks and SUVs. They certainly didn't do this 10 years ago because their capacity was so big that they were losing billions of dollars on it for years straight. And when they were pretty much out of cash, they said, we got to go to the taxpayer because the banking system is imploding and there's simply no money to be loaned out there. GM is making the right call on this, but unfortunately the politicians are once again getting in the way. According to Senator Rob Portman of Ohio, he says that GM let Northeast Ohio down in their decision to shutter factories and lay off workers. So he's saying also that they're turning their back, the GM is turning its back on American workers. Quoting the senator, "I am deeply frustrated with General Motors' decision to shut down its Lordstown plant and disappointed with how hardworking employees have been treated throughout this process." The Lordstown plant, which is a plant in Northeast Ohio, only produces one model. That is the Chevy Cruze. And GM had already been cutting jobs and shifts at the plant. And why did they do that? Well, it's real simple. The Chevy Cruze has not been doing well throughout the entire decade. This is an article from 2012. Sales were going down since then, and sales continue to drop. An article from 2016. Sales of Chevy Cruze dropped 25% from the year before. And they continued dropping. This model wasn't doing well during the decade. And so General Motors got smart and said, we're getting rid of the Chevy Cruze. Not just the Chevy Cruze, but 5 other cars. The Buick LaCrosse, the Cadillac CT6, the Cadillac XTS, the Chevrolet Impala, and the Chevrolet Volt have all been eliminated. GM is stopping production of these cars because this has been a bad decade for them, and GM simply cannot afford to spend money making them if they're going to sit in the lot and not enough people purchase them. Remember, GM is a business. They make money when the people buy what they're selling, and as soon as they make a decision to shift away from that, General Motors has to say, we have to shift away too. They have eliminated production of these cars, and they're laying off workers at the plants that are producing them. What do you expect General Motors to do? They have to live according to the taste of the consumer, and the consumer is rejecting these automobiles. You may disagree with them, but you cannot deny the fact that the money is simply not there to support these vehicles and to support the workers who are producing them. So in fact, General Motors deserves praise, not scorn, for its decision to lay off workers. Understandably, if you are a worker producing or involved in the production of these vehicles, then you would be upset because this is your life, this is your income, and everything your income supports that is being eliminated. So it's understandable. But keep in mind, General Motors is a business who has a boss. You know who the boss is? The market. The market is telling General Motors, shift away from these vehicles. Shift away from what you're doing. General Motors has no choice. The market is your boss as an employee, not necessarily the company you work for, but the consumers that your company sells to. So I think people need to quit whining about General Motors laying off these workers. It is doing what a business needs to do to survive. And remember, 2008, General Motors was about to go into complete bankruptcy. They were going to lose all of the workers, all the pensions, everything. Now they're saying we're just going to cut 15% of our workforce, which you could say might be a lot of people. But how about 100% of the workforce going down, as was a real threat in 2008 when General Motors' only hope to stay alive was money from the taxpayer, corporate welfare that no business should get, but they got in order to stay alive. So General Motors this time has figured out the error of their ways, and they're not going back to them. And the president and Senators Rob Portman and all these other politicians and employees who say this is wrong, they're turning their back on America. They work for the consumer and the investor. They don't work for any town, no matter where the workers are employed at. They don't work for a town. They don't work for a country. They work for the consumers and investors of the world. We're in a global marketplace, and they are subject to the desires of those who have money to spend on the company. When they turn away, GM must adjust, or GM will face what we all remember was literally the end of everything for them 10 years ago. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and Twitter page, Libertarian Black Man. Purchase the book, Say No to Big Government, My Case for Maximum Freedom, to learn why businesses should be left in a free market and government should get out of the market and allow for people to make their own decisions. And we hope to see you in the next video.